The mountain air was razor-sharp, slicing through the clearing like steel. 8 hunters stood in a loose semicircle, their high-end camouflage spotless, rifles gleaming beneath the pale November sun. At the center, a man knelt in the dirt, his hands trembling as they pressed against the frozen ground. His clothes hung in tatters, his beard matted and unkempt, his face hollowed by hunger and exhaustion. He looked like someone who hadn't eaten properly in weeks. "Lieutenant Colonel." Garrett Mitchell stood over him with his arms folded, a thin smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "So this is the legendary Marine sniper instructor," he said. "This is Iceman." He turned to the others, his voice heavy with mockery. 6 years living on the streets, and he can't even keep his hands steady. And we're supposed to believe he can still shoot? The homeless man didn't respond. His gaze stayed fixed on the rifle lying 5 feet away in the dirt. Remington 700 that felt like it belonged to another lifetime entirely. Garrett crouched closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate, yet loud enough to carry. 5 shots, 800 meters. Miss even once, and you sign over that cabin and disappear. Because honestly, I'm not convinced you even remember which end of the rifle the bullet comes out of." The man looked up. For a brief instant, something flickered behind those empty eyes, something cold, exacting, and utterly unforgiving. Something that had never missed. "Before we continue, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment with your city or country. And if stories of resilience and second chances move you, don't forget to subscribe. Because this story proves that true excellence never dies, it only waits for the moment it's needed again." Now, let's rewind. 5 days earlier, Thomas Brennan stood before a weather-beaten cabin deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a sheet of paper trembling in his hands. The lawyer's words still echoed in his head. "Your uncle left everything to youth the cabin, the land, 15 acres. It's yours, Mr. Brennan." For 6 years, Thomas had lived beneath a bridge in Greenville, South Carolina. He slept on cardboard, scavenged meals from dumpsters, and watched seasons pass through a fog of hunger and cold. The last time he'd had a roof over his head, his wife Karen was still alive. The last time he'd held his daughter Emily, she was 19 and terrified of him. Now, somehow, he had a cabin, a place, a chance. He pushed the door open. Dust motes floated through the afternoon light. The furniture was old, but solid, exactly the kind his uncle favored. On the mantel sat a framed photograph his uncle in a Vietnam-era uniform, holding a rifle, eyes sharp and alert. Beneath it lay a note written in shaky handwriting. "Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know what happened to you. I know about Karen, about Emily, about the streets. I couldn't find you in time to help, but I can help now. This place saved me after Vietnam. Maybe it can save you too. Don't give up. You're still a Marine." Semper Fi, Uncle Jack Thomas collapsed onto the floor and cried for the first time in 4 years. He spent the next 4 days cleaning, sweeping out years of dust, washing windows, fixing the porch steps. Every movement felt strange. Space, purpose, walls. On the 5th morning, voices carried through the trees, 300 meters from the cabin. Thomas stepped into a clearing and found 8 men unloading gear from 3 trucks' rifles, coolers, tents. They moved with easy confidence, the kind that came from years of repetition. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s spotted him first. His eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" Thomas's voice was rough from disuse. "I own this property. This is my land." Iman laughed. Actually laughed. "Your land? You're kidding? I inherited the cabin. I have the deed." Smile twisted into something ugly. He turned to his group. "Guys, looks like we've been trespassing." "The bum owns the place now?" The younger man smirked. "What? You find the deed in a dumpster?" Thomas pulled the folded papers from his jacket, his hands shaking as he held them out. The tall man snatched them, scanned the page, his jaw tightening. "Garrett Mitchell," he said. "Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, retired, and you, Thomas Brennan." "Well, Thomas, here's the situation. My group has hunted this land every November for 8 years. Tradition. And now you're telling me that's over because some lawyer handed you a piece of paper? It's legal ownership. Garrett handed the deed back like it was contaminated. You know what I see? A man who couldn't handle civilian life. A quitter. And now you want to play landowner. He stepped closer. Thomas smelled expensive cologne mixed with gun oil. Where'd you serve? Marine Corps? Doing what? Supply? Admin? Scout sniper? Instructor at Quantico. The words landed hard. One of the older men straightened. Quantico. What years? 2006 to 2013. What was your call sign? Thomas hesitated, then spoke softly. Iceman. The man went pale. Jesus Christ. Iceman Brennan. Garrett's face darkened. Records. He scoffed. From a guy who's been living in the gutter for 6 years, something shifted in Thomas's eyes, cold, distant. Garrett pressed harder. Let's make this interesting. 800 meters. 5 shots. Best grouping wins. You and I pay $5,000 and leave forever? I win you. Sell me the cabin for 10 and disappear. Not interested. Of course you're not, Garrett sneered. Because you know you've lost it. Thomas stood still. Memories surfaced Steerock. 2008. Wind. Distance. 12 lives depending on a single shot. He looked at Garrett. If I win, you apologize. Publicly. If you win, I leave. Forever? Garrett grinned. Deal. What Garrett didn't know was that, at that exact moment, a Marine gunnery sergeant in Virginia was teaching sniper recruits beneath a wall of instructors past. Third from the left stood Thomas Brennan, eyes like winter ice. The targets went up. Wind, elevation, humidity, Thomas calculated it all instinctively. Garrett shot first. Solid group. Then Thomas stepped forward. His hands shook until his cheek touched the stock, and then they did. 1 shot. Dead center. Second, same hole. Third, fourth, fifth. 5 rounds. 1 hole. At 800 meters, silence swallowed the clearing. Thomas cleared the rifle and handed it back without a word. It wasn't luck, he said calmly. It was thousands of hours of training that 6 years of hell couldn't erase. That night, Thomas sat on the porch with real coffee warming his hands. He opened his old diary, blank for 6 years, and wrote, November 9th, 2019, 800 meters. 5 rounds. Proof that I'm still here. Still capable? Still Iceman. The cold night settled in, but for the first time in years. It didn't feel unbearable. And inside the cabin, his uncle's old radio crackled to life. Asterisk, he tuned the radio to a classical station. Beethoven flowed softly through the open window. Karen had loved Beethoven. I did it, Karen, he whispered into the darkness. I didn't know if I still could, but I did. Stars emerged one by one overhead. Thomas stayed on the porch until midnight before finally going inside. For the first time in 6 years, he lay on a real bed. Sleep came unevenly. The softness felt unfamiliar, but he didn't mind. He was home. At 11:47 p.m. that night, Craig Whitmore uploaded the video. He titled it, Homeless Veteran Proves True Excellence Never Fades. In the description, he wrote, Today I witnessed something I still struggle to believe. A man who lost everything reminded me that some skills, some dedication, run so deep that even 6 years of hardship can't erase them. This is Iceman. This is what mastery looks like. Craig shared it first on a veterans forum, then on YouTube, then on his wildlife photography blog with over 40,000 followers by morning. It had 5,000 views. By the next afternoon, 50,000. By the end of the week, it's over 2 million. The comments became a living tribute. I served with guys from Quantico. The stories about Iceman are legendary. That grouping at 800 meters in wind, I've shot competitively for 20 years. That's superhuman. This man trained the people who train our snipers. Show some respect. News outlets picked it up local first, then regional, then national. Homeless veteran. Impossible precision. A comeback story for the ages. Thomas saw none of it. There was no internet at the cabin. Instead, he repaired the porch, chopped wood, walked the land, relearned how to exist in space that belonged to him. On the fourth day after the challenge, a truck came up the trail. Thomas Tenston relaxed when he saw Davis Coleman step out slowly, hands visible, respectful. "Mr. Brennan." "I don't want to intrude," Davis said. "I just wanted to bring you something." He handed over a box, groceries, coffee, bread, eggs. "And I wanted to apologize," Davis added. "Garrett was out of line from the start. I should have stopped him." Thomas took the box. "You stood up when it mattered. That's enough." Davis nodded. "There's something else." The video went viral. Millions have seen it. You're famous. Thomas's jaw tightened. "I don't want to be." "I know. But people want to help. The VA contacted me. They want to offer priority care. No waiting lists." Thomas stared into the valley. "Why now? Where were they 6 years ago?" Davis had no answer. "I should also tell you Garit's gone. Closed his shop. Left town. The video destroyed him." "I didn't do it to destroy him," Thomas said quietly. "I did it to prove I was still alive." "You proved more than that," Davis replied. "You proved some things can't be taken. Not by time. Not by pain." Chen turned back to the console. "Begin re-encryption on all open channels. Shift priority traffic to closed relays until verification is complete." Hartman gave a brief nod to Reyes. Orders went out instantly. The room surged back to life. For hours they worked under her direction. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't demand attention. She gave clear, precise instructions, and if everyone followed them without question, then a new alert cut through the noise. Urgent civilian distress signal. A live feed appeared. The cargo vessel Prosperity Star. Drifting in darkness off the coast of Okinawa, its transponder blinked erratically. No response to hails. "That's inside the same grid we just patched," Reyes said. "And the interference matches Theta 7, Hartman added. Chen didn't hesitate. "They're using your compromised channel as cover." "Someone's moving through the blind zone," West snapped. "We don't have confirmation." "You don't need confirmation," Chen replied calmly. "You need action." She began assigning response teams, marking coordinates, requesting drone coverage, and calling in support aircraft. Her timing was flawless, efficient, instinctive. Reyes found himself moving without thinking, relaying her orders. He'd worked under senior officers before, but never someone like this. Her control wasn't loud. It was absolute and earned. Within minutes, the plan was live. Rescue units deployed. Communications locked down. Intercept routes secured. West watched from the edge of the room as Chen directed the operation with quiet certainty. "You've done this before?" he said finally. She didn't look up. "Under whose command?" he asked. She paused, just long enough for the silence to settle. "Under mine." That single sentence said everything. Before dawn, drone feeds confirmed the Prosperity Star had been boarded by unidentified vessels. Chen guided intercept teams through the new encrypted network, cutting the hostile channel and restoring control. The threat was neutralized. Reyes glanced at her as the final reports came in. She stood near the map table, arms folded. No trace of triumph-only focus. That was what made her different. She wasn't proving herself. She already knew the cost of failure. The officers who had laughed earlier now moved with quiet respect. No applause. No ceremony. Just silence, the kind that comes with understanding. Rain tapped lightly against the hangar windows the next morning. Inside the operations center, exhausted faces hovered over glowing screens. Coffee cups stacked high. The tension hadn't fully lifted. Then the main display pulsed. Encrypted command call. Validation required. West stepped forward. Rear Admiral Marcus West, North Island Command. Access denied. Authorization insufficient. The room froze. There's only one clearance that overrides this, the operator said carefully. Chen stepped forward, took the keyboard, and entered a short sequence. Smooth. Precise, a tone sounded. Access granted. Fleet Commander, Pacific Special Operations. No one moved. Fleet Commander, Reyes whispered. West went pale. Chen turned to him. Admiral Sarah Chen. One by one, every officer stood and saluted. West followed Laszlo. Deliberate, sincere. By sunrise, helicopters descended over the bay. Rescue crews unloaded survivors for civilian scientists alive. No casualties. At the far end of the tarmac, Chen stepped off the final aircraft, flight suit streaked with salt and oil. She carried her helmet under her arm, expression steady. West waited near the hangar doors. The weight of his earlier mistake clear on his face. Admiral I. She stopped him gently. You acted with partial information. Now we act with better. It wasn't forgiveness or condemnation. Just truth. West nodded. Understood. Weeks later, the base had changed. Ceremony gave way to precision. Noise to discipline. Theta 7 was gone, replaced entirely by Omega-3. During an unannounced inspection, Rear Admiral Elaine Collins reviewed the charts and smiled faintly. At last, she murmured, "A command post, not a parade." In a quiet ceremony, Chen awarded Lieutenant Reyes a single commendation medal. "You didn't perform," she told him. "You delivered." The story spread quietly through the ranks. True authority doesn't need volume. Rank authorizes, competence protects. Judge by results, not ribbons. And when someone underestimates you for being quiet, remember Admiral Sarah Chen? She didn't shout. She stood steady and everything changed.